Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the ShopNotes Podcast. I'm your host, Phil Huber, joined, as always, by John and Logan. Today is episode number 81. On today's episode, I'm not sure what we're going to talk about. We'll see what happens. Just want to remind you that today's episode is also brought to you by Shaper Tools. They're the makers of Shaper Origin, the handheld CNC router that brings digital precision to the craft of woodworking. Tackle joinery, cabinetry, hardware installation, and more with speed and precision. Try it risk-free in your shop for 30 days. Visit Shaper Tools to learn more. Welcome.
Mm-hmm.
We're here.
This is a welcome. It's early today.
It is.
I mean, but I will say, it's been cool out. Like, how nice has it been to wake up and have it be like low 60s versus waking up and having it be like 80?
Yeah.
Humid
right.
already.
No, it's been very nice. It's like 6 days in a row of really pleasant weather.
Yeah. Yep. And we've gotten rain. I know there's a lot of people in the Midwest and all across the U.S. that are going to be pissed that we got rain and they didn't, but in your face.
But a lot of those people have mountains and oceans and lakes.
That's true.
And we have Iowa.
We have cornfields.
Yeah.
Yep. So, I have a story for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I'm wondering if maybe it might spur something, because it's, we're kind of shooting from the hip this morning. So I was over at my buddy's place this weekend, Sunday. He texted me and said, "Hey," it's like, "what are you doing Sunday night? I'll occasionally go over to my buddy Greg's shop and we'll just hang out in his shop and turn some stuff and, kind of dink around and whatever." It's good shop buddy time, right?
Mm-hmm.
John's always talked about getting shop buddy.
Mm-hmm.
So I was over there, and out of the blue, Greg says, "Hey, I need you to make a list of tools I need to buy." What do you mean? He's like, every year when our performance bonuses roll around. I said, "What's a performance bonus?" Because we don't get those.
Because we don't perform.
Well, I was saying we'd probably have to pay. He said, "Oh, every time that performance bonuses roll around, I set aside, a couple $1,000s out of the performance bonus to buy myself tools," because he works a lot in his position that he's in. He works a lot. They have a busy season, kind of a cyclical busy season that they end up working 60 or 70-hour weeks. So he says, kind of my reward to myself for working too much is buying tools. He's like, "I always upgrade something in my shop." Now, Greg has done very well for himself professionally, works very hard, has a one stall of his garage is designated a shop. It's set up very nicely. There's sliding barn doors in between the rest of his garage and his single stall. It's conditioned and stuff. I'm sitting there thinking, how hard it is to tell somebody what to buy when I'm I'm kind of picking Greg's brain, like, "Hey, what do you like to do?"
Mm-hmm.
And I guess what I was getting at is how hard of a question that is to answer for somebody that you don't really. I mean, obviously I'm friends with Greg and I know what he likes to do, but I'm like, well, are you planning on doing any more flat work? Because he has a saw stop, a joiner, a planer. He has one of the small Supermax drum sanders. I think it's the 10-inch wide version.
Yeah.
So it's a 1020. So he has a nice Laguna band. So he's set up pretty well in his shop for doing flat work, but a large portion, probably I'd say a third to a half of his shop is turning stuff, which is what we do when we go over there. He has a big Laguna lathe, a lot of pen turning stuff, and a smaller jet lathe and a lot of a lot of turning blanks. So I was kind of picking his brain, like, "Hey, are you planning on continuing flat work, or are you gonna concentrate on turning? When you get shop time, what do you do?" He says, "I turn." I said, "Okay, well," and so we started talking about it, and this ended up into a 2-day process. So the other night I went over to his house and I was helping move stuff around, and he's selling a bunch of his stuff now, because he's like, he's like, my jointer. I said, well, initially when he told me this, he's like, you need a jointer. He's like, I got one. I was like, what? He had a huge Steel City like in the corner behind the dust collector. I never saw it. I mean, I've been in the shop a dozen times, never saw it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so you need to get rid of this. If you're not gonna use it, get rid of it. And then if you decide down the road you want to get back into flat work, I think the space is better suited for a combo machine, at least in your one stall. He's interested in upgrading his shop space to something like the president of the Des Moines Woodworkers Club has a off-site building that he rents, or he bought it.
Yeah.
And Greg would like to do something like that, but I guess is it preemptive, in your guys' opinion, for somebody that has been in woodworking for 8-9 years to decide that, you know what, no, I'm done with flat work for now, sell all the tools and concentrate on one craft like turning or carving or something like that? Or is it, in your opinions, you have the tools, you might as well hold on to them in case you ever want to do it again? Phil shaking his head.
No, I would say that if you don't have a current interest in it, especially for a couple of reasons, he's in a one stall garage.
Yep.
I mean, it's plenty big for a shop, but can fill up pretty quickly.
It does, yes.
Like a jointer, even a table saw can take up a lot of space pretty quick if you're not using it a lot. So, and then it's one of those things where I feel like, at least for me, obviously I can't specifically answer for another person, but if I'm not using it or don't see a use for it, then I feel like it's either being wasted or I have a subtle sense of guilt that I should use it. And he probably would be better spent in having the space represent his interest so that when he walks into it, it's a sanctuary for him and a place of creativity or whatever, that he can do what he wants in there. I mean, because, if you were to ever get into flat work stuff again, it's not like table saws are going out of style or anything.
No. And I think I definitely think Greg will keep his saw stop that he has.
Yeah.
But that it's an interesting point, because he said, well, we're moving his jointer. He has a big wall, like one wall of his shop. So one of the long walls in his one stall garage is a huge, it looks like a built-in with a miter saw station on it. So if you guys have ever watched any of Jay Bates' stuff, it's similar to that, where there's like cubbies behind it and stuff. He had all his turning stuff in there. But Greg did it nice. It's on wheels. So the entire 12-foot section slides and rolls.
Whoa.
Yeah, there's like 14 casters under it. It's pretty awesome. But we were moving the joiner out. He's like, what do you think? Should I get rid of this? And I said, Greg, when I have a tool that has this much dust on it, that's my sign to get rid of it.
Yeah. He's already gotten rid of it. He's
gotten rid of it by shoving it into the corner.
Yeah.
Exactly. So what do you think, John, coming from a shared shop space with your rest of your family? What's your opinion?
I think he could definitely live without a joiner. I don't have a joiner, and I do just fine. So if he's not using that, definitely get rid of it. The table saw, I mean, even when you're not using a table saw, it's still being used because it's a great place just to pile stuff on. Use as a workbench.
That's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah. So, but,
well, for turning, you can just put a piece of hardboard over the top of it, and now it's like a finishing table.
That's true. That is true. Yeah. Well, and we talked about it was interesting because it led down a discussion of what can he do to minimize the footprint of some of the machines in his shop. But first of all, when he was asking what he needed to buy, I said, Greg, at this point you have more tools than anybody could want. Basically, I was like, now anything you're buying is just that really nice to have, fluffy stuff. It's like we're looking at his, we kind of narrowed it down to he wanted to spend the money on turning stuff because that's what he does. That's what he enjoys. That's what we do together.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, you got the lathe. You have more chucks than, the Woodsmith store has in stock. It's like at this point, anything you'd buy would be that really nice, like, you don't always use it, but when you need it, it's really nice, like a hollowing system or a coring system, or he had a vacuum chuck, but there's better vacuum chucks out there. I mean, just a lot of that type of stuff. But we started going down the path of minimizing footprints of stuff to kind of gain the space. So we were talking about his saw stop. He has, I think he has the bigger fence, which is like the 52-inch fence, I think.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, well, you have a separate router table. You could put the router table in the wing of the table saw. That's going to save some space. He doesn't have a floor. He doesn't have a good drill press, which for turning, you don't necessarily need a decent. I mean, you don't really need a drill press for turning. Yeah. Most of the stuff you can do with a hand drill, or you drill it on the lathe in the chuck.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, if you got a drill press, I would suggest a bench mounted drill press or bench top drill press, and then it can go under the wing of the table saw.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just it was a hard. If I said, hey Phil, here's $5,000, I need you to buy me a bunch of tools. It's like that's a hard thing to do for somebody.
Yeah, I think once you have all the main tools, it's hard to just like say you need such and such tool. It's like then you're just buying for need at that point if you need something specific for a project, because then it's just like you're getting stuff to get stuff. So kind of just depends what you're doing.
I would think that at some point then you would just, maybe swap out some of the lower quality items that you got when you were just starting out because you didn't have a lot of money.
Yeah.
So you're basically trading in and trading up.
Yeah, which is what is kind of what we ended up talking about. We kind of decided on there's a handful of tools that were going to go. Like the jointer was going to go, the lunchbox planer was going to go, the sander was going to go, and then he had like a 12-inch disc sander and one of the smaller, what are they, like 4x40 belt sanders, like combo ones.
Yep.
So those were going to go, and that was going to free up a ton of space in the shop.
Sure.
The one thing that Greg really likes to do when he does flat work is cutting boards.
Oh.
So he was talking about maybe purchasing a bigger belt sander or drum sander that was on wheels, so it was easily movable, like some of the Supermax.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Whatever they are, the 2040s or 2550s are on wheels. So
I could see that.
I'm just kind of I guess I have too many wants that I'm always like, I'm never going to get it all. There's always stuff for me to buy. But
yeah, well, it's also like, what is the stuff? I mean, because I have a list of sort of dream tools that I think I want, but I don't know that I would actually use them.
Yes, and that's But I guess with that, here's another question. As your shop space gets bigger, if it does your ability or willingness to get those tools that you might not actually use, does that increase because you have the space then?
I think the temptation is there, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Because I could see that. As the space gets bigger, the space becomes less valuable. If that makes sense. At least that's how I picture it.
Yeah, I can see that. I've just noticed that in my shop, I've really come to value open space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just being able to move around, and I just have gotten rid of a bunch of stuff, and it's nice to feel that openness in there rather than having to like weave my way through different things. And
I think I said that when we dropped your workbench off, Phil. I was like, oh my God, there's so much room in your shop now that there's not a gentleman's dresser in there. Like, holy cow. Mm-hmm. Your shop feels huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I'm getting to that point too where I'm gonna twist an ankle or something walking through my shop. There's just stuff on the floor and stuff everywhere. But yeah, I think I'm even getting to the point where maybe I need to start downsizing on carts. You know, I'm pretty cart rich right now.
Yeah,
it's a good time.
We had a couple company auctions where you bought a lot of carts.
Right.
Yeah.
I was trying to monopolize all the casters and drive caster prices up, which I think I've done. Yeah. So it's a good time to divest, liquidate some carts and gain some floor space. So
yeah, we thought during the woodworking, the pandemic, the woodworking casters were going to go through the roof, not the toilet paper.
Yep. Right. I was squatting on casters.
Yeah.
But so
that's funny.
Yeah. And I've always
go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I've always kind of wanted to, like you said, put the router table into the footprint of the table saw too. And so I can get rid of my router table and have that all in one footprint. So get some space back, but someday.
It's very nice.
Yeah.
I will admit. I also think it's kind of easy to do. It's easy to do a magazine article on X tools that you need, or when you start at woodworking, these are the setting up shop tools that you need. But when you start thinking about it in real life, it becomes a lot harder to know exactly what somebody wants to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think everybody is unique. Like, not to keep focused on my buddy Greg, but because this is what him and I just did, I asked him, I was like, well, tell me, when you go to make cutting boards, where are you buying your stock? Like, do you need your joiner? Do you need your planer? He's like, no. He's like, I get so little shop time because of his work life.
Yeah.
And he has a family and stuff. Like, he's like, I just don't have the shop time. When I'm ready to work, I'm not going in and flattening and surfacing roughs on stock.
Right.
He's like, what I'm doing is I'm going to the woodsmith store and buying S4S stock. He's like, I know I'm paying significantly more, and a significant amount more for the S4S stock, but I can just hack it up, glue it together, make a cutting board.
Right.
And I said, hey, that's fair. If that's what you're doing, then you don't need the joiner planer.
Yeah.
Now, when you got a buddy like me that just keeps bringing you rough sawn lumber,
then a joiner planer helps.
Yeah. But, so, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of interesting. Like, it's like all these people that do segmented turning that I see they have a complete, like, shop setup. They don't do anything else. They do nothing else besides turning. But they're doing segmented turning, which becomes a weird blend of, like, making a cutting board and turning it. Because you're cutting apart all these little tiny pieces at super accurate angles to glue them back together to make a bowl.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay. I mean, I guess if that's your niche that you want to do, then yeah, you probably need the joiner, you probably need the planer, you probably need a table saw.
Yeah.
But if I was going to retire tomorrow, I would be like, I would go complete, Bill Carter and have a garden shed with a lathe in it. Mm-hmm. That'd be it. And
all right.
Window air.
Yeah.
Something I just open the door and blow it out.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if all you're going to do is turning, would you have all your lathe stuff and then maybe just a bandsaw to break down?
Yep.
Rough
and the battery powered
sizes.
chainsaw, right?
Yep. Exactly. That's exactly what I'd have. Mm-hmm. Although I'm kind of over the battery powered chainsaw thing. I got on that kick for a while.
Yeah, you did.
I know, and it was great until I bought a big boy chainsaw. Mm. And then I'm like, oh, this is what fast is. Like, don't get me wrong, there's something to be said for running a chainsaw in your shop and hacking up a bowl blank.
Yeah.
Or even if you have a blank mounted on the lathe and it's super out of balance, you can grab that battery-powered chainsaw and just zip a corner off of it quick. You get a little sleepy when you do that with a gas-powered chainsaw in your shop.
It's like, I'm just going to hit the snooze button right here.
Yep.
So you take the corner off it with the chainsaw while it's running then?
That's right.
While it's turning?
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly. I have a friend here in town that he bought some wood from me. I've given him some wood too, and he's extremely talented guy. And I've seen him texture bowls with a chainsaw as the lathe is running.
All right.
And Andy does a bunch of like chainsaw carving and stuff. Yeah. So he does tree work for a living. So he knows his way around a chainsaw, but the amount of flack he caught on some of the Facebook groups about how unsafe that is, it's like, settle down, peeps. Like, settle down. I mean, I get it,
yeah.
Right.
But settle down.
Stand back. I'm a professional.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. So
maybe we can devote a whole episode to the safety police.
No. It's just like all right, so this is what grinds my chisels with Logan. Over the last, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we've gotten a handful of emails. Because I must have had some turning videos go out somewhere. Boy, yeah. And I got some videos about how you should not drive in a drive spur with a metal hammer. Like, that is shop class 101. Well, listen here. I didn't have turning in shop class. Second off, drive spurs are fully hardened now, so you're not going to mushroom them. And if they're not hardened, the manufacturer stepped down that butt end of them, so if they do mushroom, they're still inside the Morse taper.
Yeah.
Buttheads. So, gosh, I had so many people email me saying, hey, you should never use a metal hammer to drive in your drive spur because it's going to mushroom and scar up your Morse taper. Yeah, I get it. If I'm in the 70s, it would. Manufacturers are smarter.
Okay. Because they know people.
Because they know
the metal hammers.
Right. They know that dummies like me are grabbing a metal hammer.
All right.
Yeah. I just run the podcast for me.
There we go.
Let's just sit here quietly then. Reflect.
Have to find our center now.
Yeah. You know what I do, like, completely off the woodworking topic? I like how I have adopted a bunch of plants behind me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Becky has brought all these plants in, and it really makes my office feel more jungle-like.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So.
You need that sun.
I know.
Which is funny, because I have almost exactly the same plant.
Did Becky bring those in, too, or?
Yep. I just
Somehow.
came in.
You've adopted plants.
Came into my office one day, and I'm like, whoa! My other office plant had a child. I don't know what.
Oh, yeah.
But yep.
So, this podcast brought to you by Earl May. Yeah.
So what does he have for turning tools, your friend?
Yes.
He's got them all.
Oh,
okay.
God,
I didn't know if it was.
Yeah. It was funny because the first time I went over there, I was like, hey, Greg, I was like, do you have a chuck? Because if you don't, I'll bring one. He's like, yeah, I got a chuck. I was like, all right, well, which one do you guys? Like, oh, you got the Vic Mark. I said, oh, yeah, that's a good chuck. Like, that's one of the best chucks you could buy. I was like, which size Vic Mark do you have? He said, all of them. I was like, oh.
All right.
I said, okay, well, which size jaws do you have? All of them. He's like, I just ordered everything.
Okay.
Oh, man. So, now Greg's he's a cool guy. I've really enjoyed hanging out with him in the evenings on the weekend and turning stuff. This was my creation last week when I was over there. Did a little hollow form.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it was kind of fun. It's I pulled the foot off here a second ago. I need to glue that on, but
that form always looks like a Christmas ornament to me.
It does. I mean, if you turn it upside down, it'd be a complete Christmas ornament.
Yep.
I was thinking it looked like a lightning rod top, kind of.
Sure.
You get the ball on the lightning rod, or like a weather vane or something.
Yep. Or like the onion dome on some Russian Orthodox church or something.
Exactly. So I need to glue the foot and the finial together, because this finial is actually two pieces. It's that at the top.
Cool.
So I need to glue them all together. But it was interesting because we were. This is actually a shout out to one of our other listeners. I can't get this one off now. Dang it, made it too tight. One of our other listeners, Mike Elliott, he's down in Ottumwa. Oskaloosa, Ottumwa? One of the two. He's down there, down south. I went and bought some carving chisels from him a couple of months back. Oh, it might have been last summer, actually. It was earlier this summer. So there we go. There's
that's cool.
Yeah. But so I was down at Mike's shop, and he said we were just chit chatting. Super cool guy. We had similar backgrounds in the packaging industry, and so we were talking, and he held up his wood. He said, "Hey, you know what this is?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's mulberry." And he started he's like, "Oh," it's like, "Yeah, nice." He's like, "I'm surprised you knew that." It's like, "I run a sawmill." "Yeah, of course I do." So he was quizzing me on all these woods. It was like Stump the Chump, and I said something about how I was like, "Oh, you know what I've been trying to get a hold of is some Osage Orange." He's like, "I got some. You can have some." So he sent me with a couple of chunks of Osage Orange. And when I was over at my buddy Greg's this last weekend, I had brought him a chunk of that, and it was pretty cracked. So I wasn't sure what we were gonna do with it, but we needed a jam chuck for something that Greg was turning. He was turning a cigar ashtray, so it was like a bowl that had two spots for cigars to rest in and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And we needed a way to jam chuck it so we could turn the bottom and stuff. And so we grabbed that piece of Osage Orange, jam chucked it. Greg finished the bottom off, and then he was going to hand sand it, so I was going to turn something. And I was like, I just really want to see how this Osage Orange turns. And this little guy's just what came out of it. It actually turned beautifully. It's a little, I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe this is Iowa's hardest native wood, is Osage Orange.
Okay.
So it was super hard. It polished really well. Even though they call it Osage Orange, it is very yellow. Like, everything looked like I had, like, ground mustard all over everything. I mean, it was just, like, yellow as yellow could be. But, yeah, turned that and did a couple little... Greg had some ebony there, so I did a little ebony foot, ebony top, and then the little ebony finial on it. So, yeah, so that was a fun little project. The best part was when I brought it home and I showed my wife. She looks at it, and she's like... I don't know why you're showing me this. You know I hate the tall, pointy stuff. But nice execution.
Yeah. Good for you.
Like, aw.
She's like, I'm glad you're happy.
Yeah, that's kind of what it was. Like, are you happy with it? Then I don't care.
Yeah.
So she just doesn't like that. I bring home my projects. I'm like, hey, Mom, look what I made in class today.
Put that on the fridge.
It has to go on the mantle. Yeah, exactly. It's like I'm hanging my artwork up when I bring it home. It's like... doesn't appreciate it.
You need to build a set of display shelves that's just for you.
That's another sore point, Phil, because that's what the built-ins in our office were. I have my half of the office, and she has her half. And they're not done yet.
Right. Oh, right.
Yeah, thanks for bringing it back up.
Pick that scab.
Yup. Mm-hmm. I have the wood to do it. Just haven't done it. So.
Do it on video.
Yeah,
it's true.
Apparently, that's the way you get stuff done.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of which, have you worked on your bench, Phil? Like, have you worked on it? Like, physically made something on it?
I haven't made something on it. I've done some, like, shop maintenance stuff using it.
Okay.
I've had some family in town recently, so I haven't had the opportunity. But
I was going to ask you how it was working out.
Yeah, pretty excited right now because... once State Fair finishes up here, I'm probably going to be like full Christmas present mode. So it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Yep. So I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on the bench after building it, because I think it's going to be. I talked about building a bench. We both were talking about building a bench, and now that you've built yours, I'm going to need to build one. Have to build it on video, I guess. Well, the problem is probably gonna have to build it for a Popwood article, so gonna have to come up with a design. And I just love the shaker design, so it'll be a shaker style bench. I just don't know what. See if I can get Chris Schwartz on the horn and see what bench the the Canadians were using back in 1725 and build a historic replica.
There you go.
It's made from beaver pelts or something.
That's right. It's beaver pelt rug in the shop. Oh my god, I don't know how I haven't thought of this.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
So Phil,
it's nature's anti-fatigue mat.
Yep.
I saw somebody commented on the bench videos saying that they thought fur was too soft for a top. Do you have any comment on that as far as
so in total honesty and full disclosure here, I built the top out of white fir from Logan. Mm-hmm. That was a derecho tree. So part of it was sometimes you do woodworking with the materials you have at hand and not the materials that you wish you had. Otherwise, that's never going to happen. So there's a little bit of that. Two, Logan and I did some research on white fir because it's one of those you don't come across it every day types of materials. And white fir is a little on the soft side, but what it does have going for it is that it's very resistant to bending. It has a high modulus of elasticity. Mm-hmm. For all the wood nerds in there. And I know that John is secretly quite happy with that phrase. So it's a very stiff or rigid boards when you put them all together. So that was where I was going for on that. But then I was also kind of channeling the fact that, in the English tradition of woodworking and benches, a lot of their what they would call like joiners benches were made from pine softwood tops. There is a very long-standing tradition of having the material that's available to you that you make your bench out of. So that's kind of why I went with it. I also like the fact that it's really light colored. My previous bench had an MDF top that I had wrapped with, I think it was Douglas fir, just to give it some strength on the edges. But the MDF isn't real dark, but on the other hand, there is quite a bit of difference between the white fir and MDF, which I really like, just to brighten up the shop and have a kind of a higher contrast background when I'm working on stuff. So yeah, I'll admit it. It's softer than beech or whatever else you want to go with. I know Chris Schwartz espouses Southern Yellow Pine, which, super cool. We've done Douglas fir tops, super cool. We've had maple and oak and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know. I don't want to dismiss the comment, but I also feel like there's a lot of chasing around of perfection or idealism in workbenches in particular that I think can get in the way of somebody actually just making a workbench and using it.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's also there's two different mentalities when it comes to workbench tops. Like, there's those people that say, hey, you want a hard, solid, heavy workbench top. Make it out of ash, make it out of hard maple, make it out of something hard and heavy. But then there's the flip side of the coin is there's the people that say, no, your workbench top should be softer than the material you usually use. So if you use a lot of walnut or whatever, the philosophy is that if you drop a part on your bench, you want your bench to give before you want your work part to be dinged. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, as much as I understand the comment, it's like, well, there's two different philosophies, and it doesn't really matter. I mean, if Phil's bench dings up, so what? I mean, who really cares? He can resurface it. He can, it's not going to affect it that much.
Yeah, and even if I ding it up, does that degrade the functionality of the bench, or is that merely an appearance thing? And it's an appearance thing, because functionally the surface is going to be flat until I flip it upside down and drag it behind a truck. And I feel like the construction method that I used on that top is resulting in a pretty, you helped me move it, Logan. Like we lifted up that top and it had a vise on one corner.
Yep.
It just does not want to twist. Like it's very rigid. Super rigid. I was kind of surprised with that and pleased because that's what I was going for. There was another comment on there about the bench because I have a cabinet base that if I don't like the height of the bench, there's no real easy way to adjust the height of the bench. Whereas if you have a cabinet or if you have a workbench base and it's basically legs or something like that, you could cut it shorter or block it up or whatever. And again, I know that's, a workbench is a big investment in time and effort and things like that. And you want to get it right. I get that. I spent a long time thinking about this bench before I finally built it. However, I worked on my bench at home and I worked at, 4 different benches here. And you go back and forth to them and it's not like I can change the height of the benches in the shop here or on the studio set. So what that ended up teaching me was, to a certain extent, workbench height doesn't really matter because you'll just get used to it. It just kind of is, because my bench at home I made lower because that was the prevailing wisdom of the time, is so that it's easier for hand planing. And I can see where that's the case. However, there's a lot of other tasks that I do at my workbench that occupy easily half of the time or more than half the time, where having a low bench like that is not as ideal. So the bench that my new one now is a few inches taller. And I'll still be able to hand plane on it because I know that there's benches across the street here at Woodsmith that I've used for a lot of hand planing that are taller than the bench that I just built. And it's okay. Yeah.
Well, and I think a lot of that workbench height argument that, it needs to be low for hand planing, it's kind of an antiquated thought, in my opinion, because how often are you standing there all day hand planing? You know what I mean? Like, that's where I could see it making a difference. And I say it's an antiquated thought because most people don't make their living standing at their bench anymore.
Yeah. So, and there's only a smaller percentage of woodworkers who are doing heavy surfacing and thicknessing with a hand plane.
Exactly. Yeah. And for those people, it makes sense. But when somebody's like, oh, your workbench is way too tall, it's like, not for how I work. It's not.
Yeah.
Because I've seen a couple guys that have made really tall benches, like belly button height, because they're doing a lot of like routing and stuff, and for them it's easier to have their elbows, at 90 degrees. It's more comfortable than fully extended. So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, John, you just designed a bench that'll be coming up in Woodsmith in a few issues. Where did you settle on for the height on that bench?
I think 36 inches.
Yeah.
So pretty average height, not too short, not too tall. And I think that's what mine is at home, and seems pretty good for general purpose use. So.
Right.
But yeah, I'm sure people that are taller or shorter than average would or might adjust that, but I don't know. Like you said, for the most part, you just kind of get used to it. No matter what the height of the bench is, it's just that's what it is. So, and I would assume, like, if you're building like your bench, if you're going to the trouble to build all that, you've kind of experienced, what you want to work at, and you're pretty locked in at the height. So,
yeah, and that was the big thing that I found was, I've been woodworking for a while now, so I knew kind of exactly what I wanted in the bench. And I realize that if you're just starting out in woodworking and building a new bench, that you don't have that experience to draw from. But on the other hand, I do feel like if you're within, 3 to 4 inches, you're going to make it work and it'll be fine. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, I'm excited about being able to start using it more significantly. So,
really cool. I'll be interested to hear what your thoughts are because, like I said, I need to start working on the design for one. So,
yeah. John, you got any woodworking updates?
No, I was just thinking about that because it seems like the last week or two haven't spent a lot of time in the shop, just trying to squeeze the last little bit of life out of summer before the kids and wife go back to school. And so it's whatever they've wanted to do on the off times we've done. So, but I'll be ready for them to head back to school here in a few weeks and then have a little bit of me time back in the shop and working at home and working here. So
there you go.
Mm-hmm.
Have you done any milling recently, Logan?
No, I feel like I've done a ton of turning lately.
Yeah,
which has been really nice. I've had such a busy summer that I really needed it. I'm working on a hollow vessel across the street right now, kind of in between doing photos with Dylan for an article, and I'm doing that to kind of get prepared for an upcoming article on deep vessel hollowing.
Oh, sure.
For popwood, because hollowing something like this is a lot different than hollowing a vase that's 10 or 12 inches tall.
Sure.
Completely different animal. So I have a hollowing system from Lyle Jamieson that I'm going to be doing an article on, which will be really cool. But no, I haven't been milling at all recently, and actually I'm going to take tomorrow and Monday off to do some. I've had a couple of guys. I've been so busy this summer. I've had a bunch of people getting a hold of me to mill for them, and I've kind of pushed everybody off till August. And I told everybody, like, look, I'm really busy until August. So now my August is really busy from catching up on milling jobs. So this weekend I got a bunch of trees up north by Ames to go mill from my buddy Clay up in Ames. So it'll be interesting. I don't know exactly what trees they are. He sent me a picture, but I think I've mentioned Clay. It goes by Blind Guy Woodworking, I believe. He's blind, obviously, and so he can't necessarily tell me exactly what trees they are because they're on his his friend's sister's property. So gonna have to figure out what those are and go mill them. And then got a bunch of. We did that land clearing job a couple of months back, and we still have a bunch of those white oaks to get through. So I got some 6x6 beams I have to cut out of those white oaks. We're going to do that tomorrow. My buddy just bought a house, so we're going to use some of those 6x6s and cut them into like flooring. Or not the 6x6s, some of the white oak and cut it into flooring for his new house. So he's going to have to go have it kiln dried somewhere. So I have not been milling lately, but we're getting ready to run the mill pretty hard over the next couple weeks. It needs an oil change tonight. So,
cool.
Yeah. So, yep. Nope. I've been trying to scooch my lumber out of my one side of my driveway to my other side of my driveway, so I can kind of prep my area a little bit better, either for shop if we're going to do it, or just to smooth it out and have a better lumber storage area. Gonna have to drop a bunch of tree. There's probably 10 to 12 trees that are going to need to come down to make this a little bit nicer area. So they're all damaged walnuts anyways. So yeah. At some point they're going to die and start dropping limbs. Some of them have. So, you get these weird trees that have cracks. You can see, 15 feet up, there's a huge crack in the tree. It's like, oh no. Like, they didn't come down in the derecho.
Right.
And they were cracked before the derecho. So I don't even know if they're going to be usable, but we'll see.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Say, Phil, do you have any? You don't have, you got a couple video projects going on, but like, your workbench was the big one.
Yep.
The mid-century cabinet was another
Yep.
one you're working on.
Yep.
Usually you got like 2 or 3 going on at a time, and I think you're getting a little low now.
I am. I've actually finished up stuff. I took a bunch of things home from that I had been working on here, so there's a bunch more space in the video studio. So nature abhors a vacuum, so at some point it will get filled up with other stuff.
Yep.
So, like I said, I have Christmas projects to work on, and I'm still... This allows me now to hopefully finish up the router mortising machine that I've been working on. So I'm closing in on the last few steps on that. So that one I think will be fun to have finished up and be able to take home.
Yeah. You know, now that you mentioned that, real quick, not to diverge, but did we mention that the Porter cable line is now kaput?
I don't remember if we talked about that last time or not.
Newsflash to everybody that's listening, if you guys didn't hear, Porter Cable is going to be discontinued. I think Stanley Black & Decker owns it, right?
Yep.
So I think Porter Cable is getting shut down. So
that makes sense. I was looking for their like standard router on Amazon because somebody asked like what we were using in one of the photos or something. I was trying to source it and I could not find it anywhere, and so that makes sense why. So now I know. Knowing's half the battle.
Kind of see the end of a great power tool brand.
Yep. I think I know the 7518, something like that. They're big 3.5 horse, whatever it is, router. I know a couple manufacturers have picked up on that already, so I think the legacy will live on.
Right.
But I think
creative destruction.
Yep. And I don't know how long the brand will continue to float along, but from what I have heard, Stanley Black & Decker is shutting down the Porter Cable line.
Yeah.
It's probably because everything's battery powered now. They don't need the cable anymore. So that's just putting that out of business.
Just Porter.
Oh, God, I did not have my sound effects.
Oh, you got to be ready.
Dang it.
You got to be ready with the rim shot there. You don't know when it's going to come. So, waiting in the weeds over here.
I'm sorry. I wasn't ready for that one. Dang it. Drop the ball again.
Yep. Okay. We'll get it next time.
Yep. Okay.
All right, I think that wraps up another episode of the Shop Notes Podcast. If you have any questions, comments, or smart remarks, you can leave them in the comments section on our YouTube channel where you can see the video version of this podcast. Otherwise, subscribe to the podcast wherever you would get your podcasts from. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, wherever. All your local artisanal podcast shops. Otherwise, you can also email comments to woodsmith@woodsmith.com. Just a reminder that today's episode has been brought to you by Shaper Tools. They're the makers of the Shaper Origin. It's a handheld CNC router that brings digital precision to the craft of woodworking. You can tackle joinery, cabinetry, hardware installation, and more with speed and precision. You can try it risk-free in your shop for 30 days. Just visit shapertools.com to learn more. Otherwise, we'll see you next week for another episode of the Shop Notes Podcast. Bye, everybody.